first and foremost, it is lovely to be on here with all of y'all. As soon as I'm on here with all of y'all, give me a moment. I know what I did. I put on a webcam light so that you could see the beautiful visage. And I blocked my camera with it. So that's how we're going to start off today's session. As Danielle said, I am Ron Brown, hailing from the one and only 343 Industries, the house of Halo, and I am super duper excited to be on this call with y'all moderating this particular session. So for a little bit of let me do some background rules first. So as Danielle said, look, I'm looking in the Q&A. That's my job. I'm going to be doing all the questions and whatnot. But if you have something that you got to get off your chest, please put that thing in the Q&A, because the chat goes all kinds of which ways. You've been in chats before, you know. Our goal today is to really just make as many connections as we can with the people that we have volunteering their time from Xbox. And I'm super excited to be able to moderate this. So a little bit of context about me. Yes, I do work at 343 now, but before that, way in another life, I was in the same boat as many of you. I did my time with the Air Force. These my actual was on my sweaty chest dog tags from 2008, 2012. I took the GI Bill money and ran like a bandit and did not look back. But you know what? You're at a crossroads if you were transitioning. And it's a lifelong thing. And so please know that your boy understands exactly what it is that you were going through and what you're experiencing, at least in some way, shape, or form. And so it is a pleasure to be able to kind of share some insights and perspectives from the industry and from some people who are also veterans in a lot of senses, or professionals in their field that know games and production inside and out. So while we talk about production, what is it? Why does this look? If you're looking at video games from the outside, you might think that it's just a lot of software production and software engineering and, a couple bits and bobbles of marketing. But I need you to understand something about games before we go a step further. And that's the fact that production pretty much makes sure that games happen. It is not a stretch to say that production is just the way that things happen in the gaming industry, because I can have software engineers coming out of my ears, but software engineers won't always talk to each other. The producer is going to be the person to say, I talk to both of you and you're both doing the same thing. Stop it. A producer is going to be the person that knows, hey, this thing needs to get launched on this date. And if that's going to happen, we need to be here at this time. And so today, I want you guys to be able to get a lot of your questions off your chest. I got a couple of pre-prepared questions that'll help guide us a little bit. But the fact of the matter is, you have some professionals here who know exactly what they're doing, or at least are really good at bluffing it. So I want to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves and share a little bit more about them. So actually, we'll start with Bill, and then I will call the next person as it goes forth. So Bill, when you get on, can you give me your name, where you work, and your pronouns, and one fun fact about you? Name,
absolutely, yeah, this is amazing. What a killer intro there, Ron. That is, man, you teed it up so well. So yeah, I'm Bill Dollar, he, him. I'm an executive producer with Turn 10 Studios. I happen to work on two amazing product lines, the Forza Horizon product line and the Fable product line. That's why I get to sport this amazing background here. And Ron, did you want me to talk a little bit about my background as part of this?
I got a whole question for that. Just give me,
right.
Give me Bill, the essential Bill Dollar.
Well, there we go. All right. So EP of both of those products. Love my time in Xbox, and I'm super excited to be here today to sharing this with y'all.
Yeah. Ryan, please do the thing for me.
Hey, everybody. I don't know if I can match Ron's amazing energy and intro, but I'll give it a shot. So my name is Ryan Horn. Pronouns are he and him, and I'm up at the Coalition Studio in Vancouver, Canada, home of the Gears of War franchise. Been in the industry 15-ish years now, and I'm a senior gameplay designer. So not on the production side, but very closely integrated with it. I don't really have any interesting facts like whitewater rafting. That's all I got.
I'll take it. I'm fine with that. Whitewater rafting is an experience in and of itself. I'm not gonna lie. You're covered in more than, how are you sweating and in water? Not neither here nor there. Ken, what you got?
All right, sorry about that. I got a message saying I couldn't do it. Hi there, Ken Rossman, he, him pronouns, executive producer at Xbox Game Studios Publishing. Behind me is one of the first games I did at Xbox, Sunset Overdrive. Super proud of that. And currently on something unannounced, so I can't really share any more than that, but super excited to be here. And fun fact about me, I may be the old timer, but I've got over 40 game systems and over 2,800 physical games in my game library, just right there. So I got a retro game room that's my special place.
So did you say LAN party at your house? Is that what?
Bring it? Come on.
Okay. All right, y'all heard him. It's recorded too and everything. All right, yeah. Well, get ready for like 300 people at your house, man. I don't know.
Come on over. My wife will hate me.
So what? Tuesday? I can. Thank you for being here. And last, certainly not least, with my homegirl, Lonnie. What you got, homie? Shoot, Lanny. I always say Lonnie, but it's Lanny, and my face just does it wrong. That's on me. That's my bad.
That is okay. Thanks for having me. Yes, Lanny Lum. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an executive producer with Xbox Game Studio Publishing. I can't really think of any fun facts other than I am a Star Trek trivia champion, and I play a lot of D&D.
That's amazing. Hold on. So we have to ask, which variant of Star Trek are you a next generation homie? Are you an original series? Who's your captain of the Enterprise?
Oh, geez. I mean, I would say my favorite captain is Catherine Janeway. So from Voyager, not an Enterprise. And then I got to say, Pike is probably my new favorite, just based on the new series. And then Philippa Georgiou, she's Michelle Yeoh's character. She's amazing. So those are my top.
Okay. All right. I stand correct. Forgot. Okay.
Not a Picard. No Picard. I know it's sacrilegious.
I'm a Picard homie. But that's because that's what I grew up with. Look, we could talk Star Trek all day, but we have way more important fish to fry. Thank y'all all for being here. We're going to get right into the thing. And as the moderator, I reserve the right to ask the first two questions and the last one, because he who has the mic has the power. So the first of these questions that I'm going to ask is, we're talking about production careers in gaming. And as people who have actually sat at the helm to do the thing for a little bit, or at least have some knowledge on production in the industry, what does production mean to each of you? Sure, I gave my little tiny bit of intro, but I would love to hear it straight from people who have had a little bit more perspective on it. Please. This one's for everybody. I want to hear everybody on this one.
Oh, Bill, I think you're muted.
Bill, you're muted.
There we
Thank
are.
you. Yeah, I can kick it off. Just kind of starting way up at the top. When I think about the craft of production and what it brings to the team, the way that I like to think about it is we create the conditions for teams to be able to produce amazing experiences that realize a creative vision, while also achieving results that sustain our livelihoods and ultimately produce results that allow us to go off and do it all over again. Producers bring something pretty unique to the table. Ron, you touched on a little bit earlier. We've got engineers, we've got artists, we've got designers, a bunch of disciplines that all contribute. And the way that we contribute is by ensuring we're bringing teams together and getting the most out of everybody, by bringing clarity to the teams, by setting goals, and ensuring we've identified what success looks like, removing roadblocks. It's all about making sure we have the conditions in play for us to be able to make the game that we all aspire to make.
Absolutely. Let me kick it to Lonnie. Yeah, Lonnie. Man.
Think of it like Annie. It's Lanny. It's Annie with an L.
Yeah, Annie. Yeah, okay. Man, I'm tired of butchering this because I've said it like 15 different ways and it's really 4 letters. Lanny, but Annie with an L. I got you. Lanny, please, your perspective on what production is. I am particularly interested here because while we do have a lot of folks with veteran backgrounds, you will have a perspective of somebody who's been in production like directly. Please.
I mean, I think that I would say that production for me changes depending on what game I'm on and what the project is, what the needs of the team are. Sometimes my role is really pure operational, so I'm focused on entirely on process optimization or resource management, key performance indicators. Other times I'm kind of like Deanna Troy on the Starship Enterprise. I am, making sure that everyone has what they need. That can be creating safe places for people, making sure that people's ideas are heard, that, there's equity and equality across the team. So I think it depends on the role of the team, but ultimately my goal at the end of the day is that we are moving forward. And so whether that's a personnel thing or it's a task, the important to me is that every day we're making a step forward towards our goal.
Excellent. Ryan, talk to me.
I think so I'm not a producer, just to be clear, I'm a designer. So a little bit different perspective. And usually I think of producers as cat wranglers. Just kind of, you got a bunch of creative cats going different ways. Sometimes they go together and sometimes you have one trying to hair off in an opposite direction. And I think the clean summary of their job is keeping the cats moving together in the same direction. And from my day-to-day perspective, a lot of that is enabling me to do my job by making sure I have the support. So if I make a design and I'm ready to go to the next steps, making sure that engineers and artists are ready to come onto that project and that design with me and help me realize it. So not having to wait for 6 months before capacity frees up. The other important thing that I think production does is scope control. Designers especially almost always start a conversation with, wouldn't it be cool if? And there's a good amount for us to have some of that in meetings, but a producer's job is to say, yes, but we can't do that. So what can we do with the time and the resources we have to still accomplish the goal?
Ken, please.
Yeah, I mean, in an effort not to repeat anything that's been said, and the others have hit on it, really, I think what we do is we do what needs to be done. I think that's the shortest answer, and I think it's honestly, I mean, I've been doing this a very long time, and one of the favorite questions I get is, what's the typical day? There isn't a typical day, because what we do is whatever needs to get done. And then, if I really truly boil it down, we help, we amplify, and we accelerate the work of others. And that's really what we do is get us to where we want to go and make sure we get there as quickly as possible on quality and on budget.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in an effort to help us calibrate a little bit more, I'm going to ask one more question because, well, it might be helpful for some people to have a touch more detailed background about us. So I do know that I is not the only veteran on this illustrious group of folks. I would love to hear about how your path into the industry shaped up. Now, mind you, there's a panel, so try to keep it within a decent time frame. If I give you the high sign, wrap it up. But also think about the idea of transitioning, how your transition from the military shaped it. And in case you did not have military experience, kind of think of what some of those key skill sets that you had were as you were getting into the gaming industry. So right now, just kind of let people know a little bit more about your pathway to get where you are and a lot of the transition stuff, if you will. On this one, I will actually answer first, mostly because, well, it is something that I could speak to. And I'm going to give you an example. Here we go. My path from the military was actually to the game industry was actually relatively unconventional. Coming out of the military in 2008, 2012, like I said, took the GI Bill and ran. All right. I actually got a degree in statistics, so nothing worthy of none of that. My degree is in crunching the numbers. And even that, I knew I didn't want to do at a full-time gig. So when I moved out here to Seattle, mostly because I knew I wanted to go into tech, I actually started educational software sales, which was a little bit away from where I wanted to be. From there, because I was in the area where a lot of professionals were working, I would go to conventions and stuff and actually talk to people there and just kind of understand what jobs were in the industry. It wasn't a matter of like, are you hiring, who, what, where, when, why? It was much more of a gathering information thing. Now, you're already doing some of that because you're on this call with us, and we appreciate that. But that work never stops. You need to understand what it is you're aiming at if you intend to hit it. After like really kind of building some connections, I found out about a contract position that was opening at 343 Industries. And regardless of how people may feel about contract work and ins and outs of it, I do know that a lot of people have made their initial connection to the game industry through contracting work. And so I will always put it on the table as a thing. It may not be your best or only option, but it is definitely an option that should be explored and examined as every other option should. The contract gig was a testing job here at 343 Industries, helping test our internal testing. So anytime map designers wanted to do new maps and modes, they would want to have feedback, and very quickly, I would gather people in the studio. We play the map, we play the mode, they give the feedback. I kick it to the designer. They iterate, rinse, repeat. That was my jam. In order to be a franchise ambassador, though, a lot of what my focus was creating space for those around me, helping people feel their best while testing. And so we did things for veterans, we did things for like disability groups with that work with folks with disabilities. We did work with like women in gaming, just a lot of different ways to bring people together. And a lot of that work was something that 343 wanted to solidify here. It ended up being a lot of right place, right time, which I'm not gonna lie, happens more often than not. But the idea of communicating with people, I did that constantly as an aircraft mechanic in the military. Like I constantly had to, hey, is this plane broke? How is it broke? Why is it broke? Can it fly anyway? Those are things that I would need to communicate in a very short amount of time. Keeping people on the same page. As a crew chief, man, I got to talk to electricians. I got to talk to hydraulics. I got to talk to a little bit of everybody to make sure that this bird does what we want it to do. So the idea of communication is always going to be good, and teamwork. I'm going to steal those two from everybody immediately, but communication, teamwork. I'm yakking. I am going to kick to Lanny because we're going to go back up this ladder. Ha ha. Ha ha. But that's my little spiel. There you go.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, my path into the game industry was about 20 years ago. I started off as actually a competitive gamer. So I was on the first fully sponsored Half-Life Counter-Strike team in Canada. We're going back to 1.5, so it was a long time ago. I wasn't doing any of my homework. So I was just playing games 40 to 60 hours a week, and decided to go into that as a career. So I started with designing, actually. So I went to school to become a level designer. And my first job was at 3-Wave Software, making multiplayer maps for first-person shooters. And then we got a really good gig with EA, and we needed a producer, and none of us wanted to do it. So we literally drew straws, and I literally drew the short straw, and that was my path into gaming production. And I will say it is, I never went back. I did it for that gig, and I loved it, and I never went back.
Excellent. Thank you. Ryan, talk to me, homie.
Hey, yeah. So my path was a little, I don't know, kind of traditional, I guess. Growing up, my dad worked for Industrial Light and Magic and would bring home video games. So from a very, very young age, like this is what I want to do with my life, is do something with video games. And then a little bit later on, my cousin, saw him as a kid and asked him what he did. And he was in the Marines as a EOD tech. He said, Ryan, I blow shit up for a living. I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to do that too. So out of high school, joined the Marine Corps, and did 4 years and got out with GI Bill. And that was very intentionally a way to get money to go to school, to get into the games industry. So it was a pretty clear path for me in that sense. Where it started to kind of not break up, but lose clarity, I guess, was School in 2007, when I got out, was not super well established for the games industry. So it was kind of a crapshoot, and went to a for-profit college that was fortunate enough to have really, really good professors that helped me get a good portfolio, and then kind of lucked into a level design position at an indie studio in San Diego. So, preparation meets chance is luck, and I just kind of happened to fall into it. And since then, been at indie studios, level design, mission design, now gameplay designs, kind of working my way through design and loving every second of it.
Excellent, excellent. Ken, what it is, baby?
Hey, yeah, so I'm going to be really unconventional. I actually joined the industry almost 30 years ago in 1994, after the military. And I actually, my path, I actually wanted to be a pilot. And so I joined the service I joined the Navy to essentially pay for my college. And so I joined it as enlisted. And during my enlisted time, I ended up having a medical discharge, unfortunately, in my third year. And so, but what I did do was take what the military gave me, which was leadership skills and tenacity. And again, the others have hit on it, right? The right place at the right time, plus, preparation, plus communication, plus, chasing what you enjoy. I found that I had a natural aptitude for technology. The industry was transitioning away from cartridge games on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis towards PlayStation and the digital media that was associated with all that, CD-ROMs. And again, right place, right time, and tenacity and leadership brought me to the games industry. And again, coming up on 30 years later, still fresh, still enjoy it, and still love it every day. So
lovely, lovely. Bill, can you bring us home, please? Or at least on this question.
Yeah. So I joined the Army right after high school to be a counterintelligence agent and a Korean linguist, which it's always a good thing to drop at parties, a good conversation starter. And as I was winding down my 5-year commitment, I was kind of looking at what it is I wanted to do, whether I wanted to stay in. A lot of folks in that space end up going on to work for FBI. I decided it wasn't quite for me. And on a whim, I decided, hey, I'm in the Seattle area. Let me go ahead and apply to Microsoft and see what happens. And right place at right time. I think at that time, if you knew your way around some sort of a code editor, you had a good shot. And so I ended up joining Microsoft pretty early on in the 90s to work on Windows. I decided my passion was more on the consumer side of things. So when Microsoft spun up the Xbox division, I immediately jumped ship and went over there. And I worked on everything up and down the stack there, everything from developer tools to live services, commerce platform, some of their forward-looking design initiatives, and supported first and third parties all along the way. That was really where my passion was. So when I had an opportunity to join one of our first-party studios to work on an offshoot of one of our franchises, which became Forza Horizon, I immediately hopped on the opportunity, and I've loved every minute of it and have never looked back.
Excellent. I appreciate everybody taking a bite on that one. So I am, as the moderator should be, looking through the Q&A a bit, and I'm trying to, one, pick out some salient questions, but two, I want to do a little bit of setting us up for success, mostly because very specific conversations about how can I, person, do this very specific thing will not be best answered in this arena. Now, my job as a moderator is to pull out the kernel and see what it is. So I got a lot of questions that really kind of cover the general idea of networking and connecting. And it makes sense. Can't have a job if you don't have a job. Can't talk about how to do the job, you don't have a job. Do any of you have any specific networking advice for somebody making a transition from the military, and if there are any nuggets that you could give in that arena. Maybe we don't talk about specific, how do I get into gaming, but how does one connect with gaming might be a much better, reasonable place for us to start. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, just to jump in, you didn't call on me, but I'll jump in.
Oh yeah, this one's for anybody who would like to answer. This one don't have to go to a particular person.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on something pretty sharp, right, Ron, which was you put yourself in the right place. You know, you went to conventions, and you know, whether your personal style or military, you weren't afraid to walk up and start a conversation. And honestly, that's a big piece of it, right? I mean, I had I say kid, he's 20 years my junior, so I'm going to call him a kid. I had a kid come up to me, it was about 10 years ago, and he's like, how do I get into the industry? And again, just that willingness to walk up to somebody you don't know and have a conversation was step one. So, you know, I think that's a big piece of it. And you know, the games industry and conventions are now everywhere. They aren't isolated. I mean, E3 isn't just in LA anymore. Like, you've got PAX in 4 different places across the world. You've got, you know, all these other game conferences. And I just think, you know, putting yourself out there and not being afraid to start a conversation and ask some questions, I think is a big step one. So.
Excellent. Anybody else on the topic of networking? How you've seen people connect?
Yeah, I would encourage people to try, like, PAX is coming up in Seattle. PAXs are all over the place, so just to double click on that one. But doing things like game jams is a great place to start, and it's a great place to meet people. Just go out, you know, do activities, meet people, talk to people. I think people in general like to talk to others about what they do and what they're passionate about. And, you know, so you could cold message people on LinkedIn. I respond to stuff like that personally. And just, yeah, put yourself out there. And as a connection point to that is be ready for things to happen. Like, that's, you know, be prepared for the next step, and, you know, don't just talk to people and then don't do any follow through. Continue to follow through once you do make connections.
I will also toss in here that connection is a very wide kind of thing. One connection might not yield much of anything, but typically when I would talk to people, I would talk to giant swaths of folks. It's important to remember that, well, who knows which connection it will be. It is important to both foster those connections intentionally and to also have a thing that you're working on. So a lot of folks that I've talked to are like, I just started working on a game. And I would go on Reddit, I would talk to people about my game or get tips from them. And lo and behold, this guy also works on Unreal Engine, and he happens to work for Unity. There you are. You'd be surprised at how organic those conversations can be and how often they occur. Let me shift to another question. This one I am actually going to ask directly in the thing, mostly because I think it kind of encapsulates what we want to drive at. I'm gonna mangle it a little bit. Here we go, because I know what folks are wanting to ask. But Tyler Minnick says, in regards to production, Tyler Minnick, let me get it right, get the man's name right. In regards to production, what are prereqs that you would want someone on your production team to have, and what are the initial jobs to pursue to break into that field? I'm gonna tweak that a little bit, mostly because I think that question is a touch limited, and I'm gonna help him ask the question he doesn't even know he wants to ask. Talk to us about some of the skills, both hard skills and soft skills, that you see in the realm of production. I think this is a really good question, primarily because this is where a lot of the things that we do in the military have very obvious translations in production. Like the idea of teamwork. There is never a time on a production team where teamwork will be a bad skill to have. And guess what, friend? You work for the military. It's been plenty of times I wanted to punch somebody in their face, and I had to be on a mission with them. That's teamwork. So please give us some tidbits on skills, both hard and soft, that people might use in the production realm.
Can I actually, I'm gonna also piggyback off your last question, just on the ways to approach. I think for me, yeah, I mean, I think like when I get messages on LinkedIn, I meet people, I'll interview folks for roles, for production roles. The thing that always stands out to me, especially if I get like a cold message on LinkedIn, isn't about, because I'll get the message of like, how do I get in the industry? Which is a really big question. It's loaded. There's a lot of paths. I love it when I get asked more specific questions, like they've really kind of thought about it themselves. Like, hey, I've been thinking about getting in the industry. Here are some things I'm thinking about. Can you give me feedback? And I think that when I see people ask those types of questions, I'm learning about how their brain works and how they are breaking things down, how they're thinking about it. The same goes for in job interviews, or if I'm just out at a conference and I'm talking to someone, like what kind of questions are they asking me about? Because I think the best producers I've ever worked with are ones that are genuinely curious about how things work. And once they understand how things work, that's when they can start making them better, or they can start just refining them. So I would say that, just to tie that up, be curious and just ask really good questions.
Yes, boy, I see how she took from one question was like, hey, just how you networks talks about how you are a producer. You curious? That's why they pay you the big bucks. And if they don't, tell Ken to tell them to pay you the big bucks. He knows people. He'll get you the big bucks. Any other hard and soft skills that people tend to see in the production realm? I know one that I want to call out just because people have been asking about certifications and whatnot. I know that a lot of people do like to have, particularly in gaming, a Scrum certification behind them. How you get one of those, where you get one of those, why you would get one of those. A lot of different questions that will be answered differently for a lot of people. But Scrum, SCRUM, is a sort of production certification technique that a lot of studios use to operate their day-to-day operations. I'm not gonna go too much more into that for the sake of time, but it's definitely something that I found was super useful as I was looking into production careers before I started my thing. Anybody else wants hard and soft skills, please?
Sure, I can hop in. So a few things that fall into this camp for me would be project management, and I put process management in that bucket as well. When talking about Scrum certification, oftentimes the producer kind of is they're the steward of process oftentimes, and so having that knowledge of game development processes is certainly a leg up when you're stepping into a production role. Problem solving, strategic thinking, these are things that you often will tap into as a producer when I look at hard skills that have been developed. On the soft skills side of things, I would look for things like Lanny actually touched on it really well there around curiosity, right? Just knowing that there is something going on and being curious enough to figure out what it is. Quality judgment, I think, falls into that camp as well. We have to always have our fingers on the pulse of the industry, know not just what's out today, but what's coming tomorrow, so that we can be competitive with our offerings. Having a background in leadership is also really helpful. When you look at the fundamentals of leadership, creating clarity, generating energy, achieving results, that is something that producers at all levels are going to exercise on a daily basis. And Ron, you touched on this earlier, great communication. It's so critical to have great communication, not just for yourself, but understanding what makes for great communications, that in many times you can be a resolver of conflict, or a translator between teams, or understand when communication is breaking down. That's also critical to being successful as a producer.
Yeah, Ron, just before you jump off, I want to just build on what Lanny and Bill said. I mean, one of the typically is such a odd statement to use, but typically producers are jack of all trades, masters of none. And so the curiosity is a big piece, because asking the probing questions of an engineer or a designer and what they're trying to achieve, so you can ensure that there isn't a mismatch in the communication or a breakdown in the communication, even if you don't always understand the nuances of the details. Knowing that you're asking the right thoughtful questions, being like, oh, well, you know what, I should grab Ryan and I should grab Lanny and the engineer and get them together. And so that curiosity is something relevant, because we are typically not masters of everything. So
it's very true. Ryan, I got a special one for you. Ooh, let me spin it a little bit. What are some of the things that you've admired in the producers that you've worked best with? As a designer, I'm sure you get producers all the time, and some of them you would like to huck out a window, but you can't defenestrate them. You got to have some that you work with that you like real good. What do you like about the producers that you work with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the top things that comes to mind immediately is a give and take of flexibility in terms of how they approach a problem that adapts to how I work, how other teammates work. So not just come in like, hey, this is how we're doing stuff, which is kind of the stereotypical, producer approach of they assign tasks out and you kind of do your tasks, and that's just how things are done. It's a conversation that a good producer has with their team of all different disciplines to figure out how those people work best and how they, as the producer, can maximize that efficiency. So getting into those conversations, being open to feedback is another really, really good one. And that's applicable across the games industry, regardless of your discipline. If somebody gives you feedback, whether or not it's well sort of couched or not, being able to hear what the person is saying and intake that and process it, and really think about that aspect. I also like producers who are really good at Jira and are descriptive when they put Jiras together. Some producers will just be like, a single sentence with no description or context or anything, and then you get that Jira. For those of you who don't know, Jira is just a task management platform. And the real good producers take good notes in the context of the meeting or whatever the context they're in is. And that helps me a lot be able to interpret what they actually are aiming to.
So you said paperwork and taking feedback, but not getting yelled at or cussed at while getting that feedback.
Yeah.
All of y'all are set to be producers. You're all fine. You've all had to do paperwork. You've all been yelled at. You're all, let's go. I kid. This is a good one, and I'm actually gonna steal this one a little bit for myself. Why? Because again, ye who hath the mic hath the power. But it is a particularly good question because it asks about the difference. As soon as I find that sucker, I'm gonna ask it. It asks about the difference between project management and production. And I myself am a project manager. In my book, project manager is exactly what's on the box. I have a set amount of things that my team owns, and it is my job to see them to completion. I can do them alone, I can do them with a team, but at the end of the day, this is my list of crap, and I check off the things and make sure they are still breathing as time marches on. A producer is much more embedded into what their teams are doing and has a much more specific knowledge about the individual pieces. As a project manager, I'm not necessarily bound to timelines and stuff because I can shift things around based on the needs of the project. A producer's confinement often comes from other places or is a little bit more rigid in a lot of cases because there are multiple teams and pieces that they are working with. I work with producers all the time because the people who help me with these projects are often folks on the individual teams at my studio. But it's important to remember that at the end of the day, even to manage my projects, I need to understand what the timeline of game development looks like. And there's no way you can do that without touching on production. Is that a decent enough answer, producers and the designer, homie? Is that a
I think it really depends where you work. A producer at Electronic Arts is a designer. But a producer at Electronic Arts in the traditional sense is a development director. So they've got, it depends what the title means at the studio that you're at. I think that there's also a lot of situations where it's a hybrid. We're not, especially at Microsoft and Xbox, there is the traditional kind of corporate Microsoft project managers. And then when you kind of move into games, it's very hybrid. I think the same thing goes for, Scrum, Agile development. We have a very hybrid approach. It's not always just by the book. So yeah, others, I'd love to hear from you. I think from my experience, the definition has changed everywhere I've worked.
Yeah. And if you haven't noticed, it can be very nebulous. It can be all other duties assigned. There are some days where you're just like wrangling the cats, and there's some days where you know exactly what's happening. Anybody else on that particular question here, as far as like difference between project management and production?
Yeah, completely agree with Lanny there. My experience has been that if you line 10 producers up and ask them what they're responsible for, you will get 10 different answers. But if we kind of like zoom out quite a bit and think about kind of the craft of these disciplines, between project management or program management or game production, there are for me, I think there are some themes that you start to see. Project management is accountable for ensuring that there is visibility and awareness with regard to the status of the project, and that there is kind of communication that comes through the tooling and I guess the infrastructure that's used for the delivery of the project. Whereas when you look at a producer, oftentimes, I say oftentimes because we just can never say anything unilaterally with regard to this discipline, but oftentimes it is very team focused. We are focused on ensuring that our team or our organization has call it the resources, the people, the knowledge, the expertise at hand to be able to deliver the game they're working on. And so it by its very nature, it's ambiguous, right? You have to exercise curiosity to understand what it is you're missing so that you can go off and solve it.
Absolutely. All right. Let me see. I like what McCoy has in the Q&A, but let me see if I tweak it just a touch here, because we did already touch on some fundamental skills, but it's actually the second question that has me kind of intrigued here, and that's, what are some things about the gaming industry that a person transitioning into the gaming industry, regardless of where they might come from, but if you have military perspective on it, fantastic. What are some things about the gaming industry that a person might not be considering? The question that I often ask managers is, what is it that I should be thinking of that I'm not? Which is a great question to ask people who have more experience than you. What is it that I'm not thinking of that it should be? For me, I like the idea of understanding how games are made. If you are hoping to be in the gaming industry, you need to know, or I think it is wise to know, how the life cycle of a game looks, at least from a very broad top-down perspective. Could I nail every single part? No, probably not. But I have a broad enough knowledge of the game industry that when a person says, this is a thing, I can at least put it where it belongs, at least in my mind. Understanding the industry as a whole and not just as a person who plays games has been key to me making good career decisions. And playing games and making games are not the same thing. Very, very fun in a lot of cases, both of them, but they are two different animals. And if you try to approach them the same, that it could be a dangerous. So, dagnabbit, they took the question from me. What is it that I should be thinking about that I'm not? There it is.
Yeah, I think the research and understanding things, I didn't understand that there were game designers until I was a year into school. I didn't understand that there were different kinds of game designers. I didn't understand that different studios had different names for different and the same game designers. Like, it's all very confusing. Reading job postings from multiple studios is, in my opinion, a good way to kind of get a vibe check on how a studio approaches that thing. But each studio tends to have some different approaches, just like the difference between a project manager and a producer. But also, if you're thinking about production, at least at the Coalition, our producers get to know the subject matter of the team that they're producing pretty dang well. So hard surface modeling, rigging, like all these very, very specific skill sets, whether they're in art or design or engineering, it never hurts to have those bits of information. So going deep on something is totally fine, and learning a lot about it, even if you don't think it's necessarily applicable to a producer position.
Yeah, just building on that.
Sorry, one more thing, Ken. It's connected to this, but just as a note, like, job postings have requirements, and this is connected in the sense that don't let that weed you out necessarily. Like, apply for things, and that's one of the things that you might not necessarily know. You might look at a job posting and see, 3 years in the industry, and must have shipped a game. That's somewhat boilerplate, and if you wait for that, you're never going to get in. So it never hurts to apply. And that's one thing that I wish I knew, because I was very like, I don't meet these requirements, I'll go on to the next post. So don't be afraid to apply to places.
Yeah, it's a super good call. Just something to call out, just building off something Ryan said, the industry changes constantly, it matures constantly. When I started, there were artists, there were designers, and there were programmers, and there were producers. And there was no idea of a narrative designer or a tech artist. And so as the industry evolves and educates itself and refines sort of what's needed, I don't know, Ryan mentioned earlier that he's focused on different facets of the design roles. I had a friend who was an artist who loved scripting languages, and well before there was the concept of a tech artist, he married his ability to know scripting languages with his ability to make art, and found a role at Insomniac, actually, not to bring it to Sunset Overdrive, completely unrelated, but found himself a job at Insomniac as a tech artist before the job tech artist existed. And so again, marry your passions and your interests and your capabilities with your curiosity, and see where it takes you.
Absolutely. Franchise ambassador was not what was on the job description. My role changed and shifted, and they were like, what is your skill set? What do you do? Okay, now that I can tell you about. Boom, new thing. All right, we got one more big question from the chat, and then I got my one last personal question. I believe we can get these buried in 8 minutes. Danielle, you mind if we do this thing?
Let's rock and roll.
All right, let's do the thing. All right, now this last question is going to be the last question, like from the chat, is actually kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different things that we had in there. But there was a lot of questions about advice for military spouses, in general, how to get experience and suggested entry roles. What's a good starting point? And again, gathering information is never a bad point, but where are some of those specific sources of information? Like we mentioned earlier, going to the places where developers actually are. Very good example, I think, of that. So just general advice for people hoping to start that initial connection. Just, man, this is all so broad, so big. It's such a big question. Where do start?
I'd say, you have to kind of be convicted and have passion to chase it. That is pretty important. Surrounding yourself with people that are in the industry certainly does help. It creates opportunity, right? Which is always helpful. There are a lot of independent game development scenes in various places all throughout the US and the world. you don't necessarily have to start at a AAA studio. Start small. I'll say, for me personally, I got tired of waiting, and so I started making my own indie games, just to kind of learn how to do things. And yes, there are different problems that you face with AAA games, but there are also similarities with indie and AAA. So just get started. Find a way to get started. Find a way to get plugged in and develop learnings. And I it's been mentioned here, but begin reaching out and network. I get people hitting me up in LinkedIn all the time, just looking to connect and tossing some questions my way, and I reply. A lot of us do, because what I love about working on games is that we have a community here. It is a community where we share, we support, we are open with one another, and believe it or not, like, we root for people to join our industry. So don't be shy about reaching out to network.
I think another good way too is that a lot of studios, we go to job sites, career sites of those studios, but there's a lot of agencies that we work with as well. I cannot tell you how many producers I know got into the industry because of a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month production coordinator contract, just to get their foot in the door, and then transition to a full-time job that led into an associate producer and so on. So I think, like, expanding where you're looking as well, not just those company websites, but the agencies that they work with. And if you don't know what agencies they work with, I would suggest, like, finding their recruiters on LinkedIn, pinging them and asking them who they work with. And sometimes you can just, I'm not going to say you can Bing it. I wanted to say Google, but I corrected myself.
I'll throw out one last, this was something I noticed from talking a few different times. Don't be narrow in what making games is, or what a game is. I once spoke at a college to a bunch of students who wanted to get in the games industry, and I specifically asked the question, how many people here want to make Zelda? And no joke, 2/3 of the class raised their hand. And it's just like, if making Zelda equals making a game, you're missing out, right? There's the indie game scene, there's mobile games, there's console games, there's PC games. Don't limit yourself to, I want to make console games. You'll just miss opportunities. So
yeah, it's all good points. Putting one foot in front of the other and just continuing to move forward, even if you don't know exactly where you're going, is a good one. I think one thing that I assumed, like, I was light armored infantry, but infantry, and I was stumped as to how those skills could apply to anything in the civilian world. And the answer is, it doesn't matter. Like, the one-to-one connection doesn't have to be there. The soft skills will kind of get you through. And I think it's much more important to focus on what you're passionate about and what you enjoy doing, and pursue those things enthusiastically, and just keep moving forward. In terms of specific resources, I don't actually know if it's still a thing because I haven't read it in a while, but Gama Sutra is a website that has a bunch of, like, really industry specific write-ups from people, resources, job postings, that sort of thing. So it's very specifically focused on the games industry, and that's been a good resource for me. And then one last thing is, I think everybody's already doing the first steps. So good job for coming to this in the first place. And just don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, transitioning is a huge, big, scary thing that honestly sucks. There's tons of resources. Don't be afraid to ask for help. A bunch of people have been through it and are going through it at the same time. And just stay focused on, what you enjoy doing, and keep moving forward.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Actually, a couple of times y'all stole what I was going to say. You chumps. The point here is, for me, the transition was all about remembering that, sure, I did thing in Air Force, but I'm capable of a lot. There's a ton of things that I can do, and it's not always in what I did in the military, where the future might lie. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the things that I took from being an aircraft mechanic, I still use. That attention to detail, that being able to communicate something under fire, being able to see something horribly wrong and stop it before it gets too bad. Those are all things that I learned as an aircraft mechanic. But I can transfer every single one of those to gaming for different reasons and in different ways, but it's much more of a feeling than it is a dedicated skill set. All I want you to do is remember that if you can literally give part of your life to your country, I promise you game production is not too far off the mark. It is a thing, the game industry in general is a thing that you'll be able to find success in, because I know the skill set, I know the passion, the dedication, and the communication, and the teamwork, and the ability to get things done while the world is yelling at you otherwise. Those are skills that we will always need in gaming, and frankly are useful in so many other industries. And you already have those in pocket. I can't hand you no more than you already got in the tank, baby. I want to thank each and every single one of our panelists, folks, for being here, giving us their time. We've asked an hour of them, and I'm not going to take more than them. So I will hand it right back to Danielle, as we've already ruined all your stuff and things. Now you get to take it and clean it up. Ha ha! We did it. Go team.
All good. What a fantastic event. And I love seeing the webinar reactions. Keep them coming, everyone. Let's give them a great big round of applause. Thank you so much, Ron, Bill, Ryan, Ken, Lanny. I think I was butchering your name before too. I apologize. Annie. Lanny, got it. Thank you guys so much. I think the audience, you can tell by all of the applause that they would agree with me when I say this was so helpful and informative. What a great discussion. I certainly agree. Kudos to all of you for being here today, making this effort to just empower your career journey. We know you're going to go great places. So let's keep this conversation going in LinkedIn. We did post the URLs for all of our amazing panelists in the chat. So feel free to connect, kind of exercise your networking skills. Let's keep this conversation going. And I think bottom line here is what I love about the military community is this organic pay it forward spirit, right? Each one of our panelists shared and conveyed that today just in their time and their advice, but know that that is available to you. Do not try to muscle through this journey alone, okay? Wherever you're at in that career journey, we are a community, so let's connect with each other. I put it in the chat, but I'm going to say it again. If you need the support from the USO, we're right there in your corner too. So our hand is extended to you. If you need it, grab it as many times as you need it along that way, wherever you're at in your military journey, okay? Military spouses, this includes you too. Thank you, Ron, for giving that shout out, because you are just as much a part of this community as well. So I love that today we touched on project management certification, Scrum Master, Agile methodologies. Guess what? The USO has some amazing education partnerships and opportunities to get you connected to free resources. So again, don't be shy. Ron, I love it. Like, just look at Ron's face. Yes, like, why would you not connect? So anyhow, easy button. Andrea is going to try her best to keep throwing it in the chat because we have such a wonderful chat going and I love it. But easy button is uso.org/transition. Again, we're here to help. Allow us to connect you to those amazing opportunities. It is what we are here for. It is our honor. Now, big shout out to our gaming team as well at the USO who had everything to do with making this event possible. So if you want to learn more about USO gaming, another easy button, uso.org/gaming.